Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with some fun mini Slimline cards. And I did multiple things to create the backgrounds. So I started off with the spiderweb background stamp that makes an appearance in a lot of my Halloween videos. And I have black cardstock here that right now it's about 6 1/4 by 3 1/4, something like that. Because I'm going to make mini Slimline cards. The stamp isn't big enough to fully cover these backgrounds. I'm okay with that. I don't want it to be perfect. And I'm layering on this. So I inked up the stamp with white pigment ink. This is Shark Tooth white pigment ink from Ink on 3. And I'm doing white pigment ink and clear embossing powder. It just gives it a bit more subtle look versus stamping the spiderweb and embossing with white embossing powder, because that would be, bright white. And I didn't want that because I'm doing layers. So not worried about it being perfect when it's all said and done. Not to mention I mess things up later on anyway. But I had used my anti-static powder tool, inked up the stamp, pressed the cardstock onto it, coated it with clear embossing powder, melted it with my heat tool, and then I pulled out the Clouds for Days stencil and that same white pigment ink, and then just a little blending foam. This is one of the Ranger, like the Distress blending foams. I usually will keep a dedicated blending foam just for white pigment ink. And I'm picking up the ink and then just basically dragging it off the stencil, and I just keep rotating the stencil all the way down. So I've got this kind of spider web, cloudy-ish sky, which you could go totally more spooky with this, but I was in a cutesy mood. But as I was doing this, I was like, ooh, I could make this like dark and scary too. But I was, like I said, in a cutesy mood. So after I did the clouds, I pulled out another stencil set. This is the Layered Bats stencil set. I've done at least 1 or 2 videos on this one. I love this stencil set. It's actually a set of 2, but I'm only using the one stencil. And I've got it in place. I used some tape to hold it down. And then I'm using Frosted Petal Nuvo Glacier paste. I've done many videos on Glacier paste since they first came out however many years ago. Biggest point of advice is to use press and seal over the container. That's what you saw me peel back. All my Glacier paste. I do this also with my glitter paste. Anything like that, I use press and seal over it. It helps keep it from drying out, and I can 100% say it works because my Glacier paste, some of them, this one's over a year old. Some of the other colors I've had for multiple years, they still haven't dried out. So because ones like this, these specific types of paste do dry out quite quickly, but press and seal, man. I do have a link to it because Simon Says Stamp does ship it internationally, because I know a lot of international people have a really hard time finding it. So Glacier paste for the win, press and seal for the win, all the fun things. I love Glacier paste because it does give you a faux kind of foiled look. And for those that don't want to get into the whole foiling thing, this is kind of one way to get that sort of a look. So as soon as I'm done, I scrape what's left, back in the container, reseal it with the press and seal, put the lid on it, wash my stencil, etc., and I'm good to go. So I set those backgrounds aside to dry. Off camera, managed to get my elbow in one of the bats, made a mess. I'll fix it later. You just put something over it. That's what I do. So I stamped images from the Too Cute to Spook stamp set. This came out last year, I think. I can't even remember. It's just adorable. So I stamped some of the little images onto Nina Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock with intense black ink. And then I'm coloring them in with my Copic markers. And I'm making the ghost pink. Like I said, I was in a cutesy mood, and there's something about like pastel sort of colors for Halloween that I really think, I just find it endearing. I don't know. So I colored on my little ghosties pink, and then I'm going to go in and color all the accessories also in sort of just less intense colors. So I'm going to use sort of lighter shades to do the little trick or treat pumpkin, and then the pumpkin this one is holding, and one of the bands on the hats. And then as always, I can't even speak. I'm working darkest to lightest It's just what works for me when it comes to Copic coloring. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and it's just it's laziness more than anything. If you want more control, or if you're still practicing, lightest to darkest is what I recommend. It just helps to figure out, blending and all that sort of a thing. But yeah, once you get comfortable with it, more often than not, most of the time, I do darkest to lightest because it's just faster. That's the only reason, honestly. It's just faster. So colored in all the different little elements, and then once I was happy with all those, I went in and colored all the black areas, which I just use grays for that, of course, because if you color it solid black, you're gonna lose all the detailed little stamped faces, etc. And I also wanted to keep these a little lighter, so I just use cool gray markers for all of these. And then I decided to actually go in with all of my darkest shades and add just little dots and details to add that little extra bit of texture. Just quick and easy. Just dot with the brush tip of the marker, and I'm good to go. This is going to be really subtle, except for the ghost, because I used the deepest pink, so that shows up a bit more. If you want it to be more obvious, you can just grab a darker marker to do that on the areas. But I was kind of going a little more subtle. So I added all my dots, and then I pulled out my white gel pen, which is my Jelly Roll 10 gel pen, the widest one. Absolute favorite gel pen. Regardless of what gel pen you use, though, if you struggle or you find yours are not working, if you don't use them consistently, they do start to dry out, especially, in the tip. One thing you can do is try scribbling it on the palm of your hand or on your fingers, because that sort of starts warming up the little ball tip in the pen. And then scribbling on scrap paper, that sort of thing. I've sometimes been able to get old white gel pens to work that way, but honestly, sometimes they're just done for. So if you use them consistently-ish, because, we all just kind of forget we have certain supplies after a while. But with gel pens, I find that, if I use it somewhat frequently, I haven't ever had a problem with these Jelly Roll ones. They've never dried out, but then I do use them fairly often. So did all my coloring, and then the clouds from the set I am stamping onto some vellum. So I put them in my Misty, used my anti-static powder tool. I inked up the clouds with that same white pigment ink, and then I'm embossing them with just white embossing powder because I want these to stand out a bit more. So emboss those, heat them up with my heat tool till they're melted. I use the coordinating wafer dies to die cut them. I also stamped sentiments from the set and embossed onto black cardstock, die cut that. Set that all aside. I'll get to that when I start assembling. My card bases are 6 1/4 inch by 3 1/4 inch mini slimline cards. So I just cut white cardstock to 6 1/2 inches by 6 1/4. Scored them at 3 1/4. And then I've got my card bases. Then on the inside of these cards, I put them in my Misty, and I'm stamping the big Happy Halloween sentiment from that set, and I used Simon's Bubblegum Positively Saturated ink. Looks a little splotchy when it first goes down. It'll smooth out as it dries. Not worried about it. So, stamp the big sentiments, and then I stamp that little spider again. He gets stamped with Earl ink, so just a nice light gray. So lined him out so he's hanging from the little sentiment, and I patted myself on the back. I eyeballed it perfectly. It lined up perfectly. Just sometimes there'll be a little gap. I don't usually care. It's the inside of the card. It's not the end of the world. But those times where things do just, line up perfectly, it's just satisfying. Those old memes, just girly things. It's just card maker things, when everything lines up, whatever. Anyway, back to the cards. I adhered my backgrounds to my card bases with craft tacky glue. So just scribbled on a light little amount, adhered that. I trimmed them down to be slightly smaller than the card base. So these are 3 inches by 6 inches, something like that. So trim those down. Everything is dry at this point. But yeah, I had smeared one of the bats on this one that I'm adhering right now. On the lower left there, it smeared, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I got my arm in it or something before it had a chance to dry. So I will cover that up. For my clouds, I am running these through my little Xyron sticker maker. So this will apply adhesive to the back of them. This is my favorite way to adhere vellum elements. People always comment, it's like you can just, you know, apply the adhesive, then die cut them. You can, however, the pressure from the die cutting will create basically wrinkles in a sense in the vellum. It sometimes happens, it sometimes doesn't. I prefer this way. If it's super intricate, run your cardstock through your Xyron first to get the adhesive, then die cut, because the pressure will then remove any extra stickiness, because that's the biggest thing. That's why I'm tracing around these die cuts with just my bone folder. And that picks up any extra stickiness that would stick around the edges that you just don't want. So you can also take these pieces. Another option, because it always gets mentioned, is you can run that piece through your die cut machine with no wafer dies, and the pressure versus tracing them works. Again, this is quick and easy for me. It's a simple image, you know, you just quickly trace around, you're good to go. But again, if it's a little more intricate, you can do all these different ways. But honestly, when it comes to super intricate dies, I prefer using liquid glue. I'm just more comfortable with it. You know, I'm faster with it, more comfortable, etc. So there's all the tips and tricks listed, I think. So I adhered my little vellum clouds. And then I popped up the sentiment with little thin foam squares. Adhered these little spiders, the ones that I stamped and colored, I adhered with the craft tacky glue hanging from the sentiment on the outside. And then this one little ghost on the little witch's broom, he was strategically placed to cover the smear of the Glacier paste that I had messed up. So I did the same thing on the second card, adhered all my little elements, and then went through my Halloween stash, and I have this stack of, it's not bling. These are the little like kind of clay embellishments. These ones are from Maker's Movement. I think, again, I bought these last year, I think. I can't even remember. They're still available, but I think they're out of stock at the moment. But yeah, I'm really bad about like buying Halloween supplies, but more often than not with like shipping delays and things to get to me in Canada, they're out of stock or the season is over, you know what I mean? So got to use them this year anyway, because there's little bats and stars and things. So I adhered those in place, and that finished off these cards, which I've then paired with some mini Slimline cotton candy pink envelopes, because again, chef's kiss, perfection. So I hope you guys enjoyed these fun little cutesy Halloween cards. As always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a picture link supply list in the blog post, and then just a supply list with links directly below the video. So you can check that all out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, for thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.